Get the backup.
Okay, cool. You can just click
Yeah.
on the video to get that box out of your way.
All right, good. Last night when I did a test, my blue ball caught my, I had to do it some length of time, and it caught my voices in the bedroom, way in back, whispering. Now I realize there's too many variables going on, and I hope you guys all understand. We've done now 3 attempts, including backup, and even the backup failed last time. Leo David is now setting up a second backup, and when he's got that ready, I'll start my actual lecture. That first lecture, we've done that twice, and both times failed to include the backup. I've never encountered. You can get a little bit of look at my house right here. I'm on a second floor, 4-bedroom. They're all libraries, huge volumes of stuff. And today, for example, this will be what we're going to do. Is that backwards to you? Probably. This is probably one of the best books I've ever had in my libraries. I have Nichols Ready reference. I have other things because I did herbs before there was chemistry of herbs and medical botany. I did the first book on herbs and the chemistry, not alleged use and or doctrine of signatures and all the rest of it, which I'm going to cover in the lecture, in the early 70s when Roy Teranishi from USDA was keying off me. There was Jim Simon was at Purdue doing all the literature that had been written up to this moment, and I was writing chemistry and a level for the military that nobody had. And the Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs book has the reason those herbs are not in the Uniform Controlled Substance Act was because I assigned rituals to them like they're doing with ayahuasca today. That was originally dimethyltryptamine, and Robert Moore, Dr. Moore, an anesthesiology in the lab next to me, was doing ketamine, telepathine, and BZ. And telepathine was originally dimethyltryptamine before Rick Strassman started doing the studies. That's how old I am. Further, Delgado was doing chip implants on the other lab and went back to Yale on the mind control things. Oh, you're putting me in now with a mic. This is all very unnerving to do these classes and prepare them as I have. You can't see them, but they're going to be much more organized. If I could screen share, you would see how I've now set up deeper files, and we will retake class 1. Greg, video start, stop, jerky, hard to watch. Yeah, imagine that. And they'll say it's bandwidth. And that's CenturyLink. And I did a test yesterday, and it goes from CenturyLink and my server, we used to call that as a gate. Now the well out of Berkeley, using a telephone and a modem where you stuck your phone into 2 slots. That's how long ago I did it. YouTube may not be what I use when I'm finished with this course, in which case because everything is censored, everything is manipulated, and now we have another variable called an AI doing its usual suspect things. And I'm transparent. You guys can read me. But yesterday there was a major bust in what city was it? Cleveland. And that might have been related to the hack on my website. Not on my website. I don't know that was hacked. On my email primary that opens my website. And there were 26 Chinese names that were found to include a website in Tehran. How does that work? Okay,
We're ready to go.
Are you?
Yep.
You're taping now?
Yes.
And you're confirming that that's going to work this time?
Yeah, I deleted all the videos.
See, it's just, there are so many variables. Why would someone with my level of expertise, I've never used this system, but I'm a quick learner, and I don't believe in anything anymore. And I'm seeing shadows everywhere, and it's probably from no sleep. But we're going to Hello, how do you do? I'm glad you guys joined me. I got 7 now. I hope that you understand this is my attempt to no longer teach. I said this weeks ago, but nobody got that. Mike Mandeville was my roommate when he did his doctoral thesis at the University of Washington on the experimental college.
So Rick, I'm sorry, but we're gonna do that next week. We're gonna.
I know we are.
So just go ahead
I
and do
understand,
lesson
but
number 2.
I'm going to do number 2 the way I want to. Mike was my roommate, and so I've been doing experimental college. I was first faculty at Evergreen, and I wanted you to understand that is not what I do anymore. I've done 50 years of teaching, and this course, this second class, is a further attempt of study, not learning how to teach. Because I don't want to teach. What I want to do is empower you, and you take, and that's going to be some assignments I'm going to give you today. You integrate this into your own knowledge base, and you share that with me like a child might, and now watch how we both grow, because I'm guessing that children are far brighter than I am, and I'm, well, more experienced. That by definition also means I'm more limited. And while I am a treasure trove of information, good luck with that. You know, I went on the internet, for example, today to try to find the best herb books for you. And the ones I would use in my library, I don't even know about them on the internet. That's because Mrs. Rose's Herbal or didn't know about Grieve and the modern herbal, did not know about Nichols' ready reference. These were tools before herbs were even of interest, because now we're going to start the class. All crops in the United States today are based on 2 concepts of principles. One, they're either storable commodities or they're non-storable commodities. Storable commodities, agribusiness. And that's what agribusiness does with 50,000 acres of combine knocking down wheat in Palouse Hills. Now, I was chairman of the New Crops Development Board for the Department of Agriculture in Oregon. I wasn't on the board, I chaired it. And in the 80s, when I tried to change the state of Oregon's agricultural thing, I have certain governors that were previous governors. They'll say I walked on water, like Dr. George Cleland did at the USDA's SBIR funding with grants, $250,000. I've had 12 of those, doing the Minnesota Forest Business Plan, doing the Canadian, I do all of Canada with Doukhobor, Mennonite. Gardening is new for me. And what's happened in our markets is that the United States is no longer having any trade. At one time, we had a trade deficit of 10-1 in small farm agriculture. And what I tried to do was I focused on non-storable commodities. That means the amount that are going to be harvested this year are limited. The markets are only this big, they're not that big. When you harvest that much with a market this, the Germans take over, and they call that it was surpluses and shortages. What are you doing? No, that's my checkbook. Okay.
Just keep going.
Okay, I know. There's things that are wrong where large agribusinesses have tried to take over. And what I am about is the small family farm. And so that's a new title. I wrote The Potential of Herbs as a Cash Crop, which was a primer that Chuck Walters and I took on together. And then I wrote Native Plants of Commercial Importance. Today, I've got a 9-volume encyclopedia on alternative agriculture. And Conrad Richter, one of your 2 primary seed sources for organic seeds, says I'm the best field man in the world. I don't know that. What happened was when I left the military and decided to be a farmer up on a mountain somewhere like a Quaker, nobody knew anything about me. I became a mountain man, and I learned how to grow crops and the correct way. And Henry Barth, the fifth richest man in the world, flew all the way over from Nuremberg, hired me on the spot here in Grants Pass, and gave me 28 farms in 4 states with an aircraft. So I worked with 28 different farm managers in 4 states with deep pockets to learn how to grow crops in these areas. Now, what I'm going to try to do is move this to the next level 30 years later, 40 years actually, and then show people how to translate that to children and try to have our children begin growing our crops and foods so that it will be their children that saves this world from where it's going now with agribusiness and GMO. GMO is not a bad thing, by the way. That's called modified. And I do that with mushrooms. I do that with everything that I've ever done. I try to work with a cultivar, something that is climatized in a given area, and then modified so it produces more of that thing in the forest. That's another title that's ready to go to press. Forest farming, where instead of harvesting chaga mushroom off of birch bark, we drill holes in the trees and we set small plugs into thing and start cultivating chaga as a cultivated crop using the story on there. When Bill Mollison did permaculture, and I'll talk about him here, I did an interview with him before anybody knew about it. And the only reason, he was a very brilliant man in his concept of permaculture from New Zealand. And what happened was he started sleeping with his students. When he did that, the permaculture movement fragmented, and now you have Step Holzer and or da-da-da, and each one has their own ideas. And what I'm doing to clean that mess up is I started sustainable lifeboats, or lifeboats with oars, in every state and every province in Canada. And what I want to do, each one's different. Oppenheimer Ranch Project in Colorado is quite different than the Missile Silo and Arapahoe. You go up to Sandpoint, Idaho, and that's the Quaker retreat where I used to teach for the Quakers back in 1986. And Joe Wyeth was a protege of Frank Lloyd Wright, and he designed his farm with Unicorn Farm on the Pack River, and his roof was 10 feet of soil, and that's where his garden was, as a bunker. He designed it. Up in Canada, all crossed up in the further what we call the territories above Canada, are farming that I've got in there where some of these religious cults went dug in, Mennonite and others. And the Quaker just called me because they have a new project. I'm the only man that ever did both their business plans. Took their top, bishop, and excommunicated him so he could do outreach to me. And that's how I met in Carlisle and did those business plans. That one of them is a low cholesterol egg. That what I did is I had them Quaker play Mozart music, and then I harvested purslane off the Fort McDowell River in Arizona, because the purslane down there grows about this big rather than a little tiny ground cover on all our gardens. That's an omega-3 it's a non-fish omega-3 source, so the egg doesn't get contaminated, the chicken doesn't get contaminated with that seafood thing. I played Mozart, and they've been enjoying that market for 30 years along the eastern seaboard with a low cholesterol egg. I did another one with them, and it worked also. And now what they're doing is making 800-foot pods, living dwellings or on cargo boxes, and they want me to set up small communities because they think the world's going to hunker down. I don't know what's going to happen. I can tell you that this coronavirus has created an opportunity for change. And despite what they might want to do with detention centers and forced immunization, I believe there'll be a civil war again. And I don't want to be part of that. What I am is a man of reason trying to turn my glass into being half full. And I'm going to start with children and earth. And the reason I chose aquaculture is it's meta, physics or meta earth. It's beyond using physical dirt. It's using non dirt or growing in outer space, that kind of thing. So the first thing I was going to do is talk to you about, after storable and non-storable commodities, I was going to talk about the history of pharmacology, because this is where all our medicines originally came from, which in European, not the Andasyrian and Gardnerian form of it, was usually a loner old hag. In the Society of Creative Anachronism, I formed the wizardry for them called witches, drools, and hags. Yeah, that's the three categories. And these were women that knew of natural sources to heal. Now, I've written a paper that I didn't put in this, but I'll include it later in your downloads for this one, on the distinction between healing and health. Healing means there's something wrong with you. Health means that homeostasis, or your center, is quite different than someone else. And so you could say that person is healthy and that person is not, and they both are the same. One size, that's what's wrong with medicine. I have a whole bunch of references on all the different kinds of medicine that are being practiced today, so that when you go to choose which crop from a healing point of view, you'll have the diversity of selecting why medicine goes in that direction, naturopathic medicine goes in that direction, allotropic medicine goes in that direction, and acupuncture goes in that, and all da-da-da-da-da. By the way, I was one of the three at the University of Washington to do the acupuncture studies for Richard Nixon. And that was where, before Hammeroff was out of diapers, where they learned, we postulated, that was Rick's, oh Jesus, I'm not even going to try to remember the names, but Dr. Black, Dr. Burgess, and one other, and I can't remember what Rick's last name was. I did the microtubule on the outside of the body with structured water. I was lead physicist under Jerry Pollack. Jerry Pollack did not have the classification I did. I was in with the boys of Brazil, 4th floor, where anesthesiology was 4th floor and 12th floor, and all the doctors got the high thing, but the guy that was doing the work were the physicists in anesthesiology. And we were creepy people, man. I had no idea. That's why I left them. I went into agriculture. That's why I'm a polymath. I saw what I was doing. I don't want to do that. I became a mountain man. And that was in 1978. I moved to Carlton, Washington, tried farming up there with a bunch of good old boys that mostly hung out at the a saloon. That was like that in Winthrop, and over the North Cross Highway, and right up there next to Canada. And I learned enough that when I came down to Oregon in 1983, I was ready to go, and that's when Henry Barth came all the way over from Nuremberg, hired me on the spot, and for the next 7 years, I had deep pockets to learn how to things, and that's why I have over 350 PDFs, and I need help completing them because I'm doing new books on the non-local mind. I'm now moving into pathworking, where magic has now become an advanced study in physics, the altered states of consciousness, where the laws of physics change. And so what I'm trying to do now is start a whole new concept in educational processes for children. They're going to mess with our children by sending them home early. They're going to maybe not open in the fall. And they don't learn cursive. New math is supposed to learning how to do mathematics. They're ruining our children. And so if they're going to be at home, why not teach them how to grow food and enable them to go beyond that? And those children, your children, are not going to be the ones that actually save the earth. It will be their children and what they learned from their parents, the new direction I'm trying to establish. And something or someone, it senses, I don't know this is true, it feels like something's trying to stop me. I have never been inhibited in this way, including Barth and the rest of them. What Barth did is he then offered me double my salary to move to Yakima, which is John I. Hawes, and run their hexane extraction facility and other kinds of things. And I turned him down. And so what he did was took my processing plant from 207 students at Road Community College, and now it's owned by Mugenberg out of Hamburg. And originally Barry Meltzer at San Francisco took it over. Barry was one of my best friends. Jim Thror had Whole Herb. These are companies, and I guess I can't remember some of the others that were startups that are now the big ones. Herbco used to be Herbarium. That was Hungarian. And I knew all three generations. The person that bought out Aloha Medicinals and Pharmaceutical, someone I worked with at in the early years with Wilcox Natural Products out of Boone. And now it's my best friend, Chuck Wanzer. We were fierce competitors during that period and became the best of friends off the racetrack. It was a learning experience for me, and imagine what I could learn having those access to that kind of resource. 28 farms, 4 states, different farm managers growing different kinds of mint and anything you can imagine, including pyrethrin. I invented a bunch of machinery that's even better than what's happening today for hemp, and working with sailcloth. Chuck I'm losing my mind. Acres USA. He and I co-authored a book that's unpublished on hemp as a virgin white paper. That is where the real markets are. Right now, they're using cottonwood down on the Columbia River where they go in and coppice it with helicopters. They take off the top 15 feet for their fiber. Hemp is far superior. And, Chuck Walters. Chuck, I was one of his pallbearers when he died. His son took over, oldest son, and moved it down to Metairie. And he and I had some issues. And that's why I stopped working and writing for Acres USA. And then he has recently sold it to someone in Colorado. And I'm going to watch probably the single most important thing that happened in American agriculture, Acres USA. And Chuck, he was one of he saw in me what I could do, like some of the other people. And so I was a primary for years with Acres. And then I met Conrad Richter. His father, Otto Richter, had started the organic movement in North America from Switzerland. And Conrad was the oldest son, took over that and made Richter's of Canada one of the 2 premier places for your certified organic seed. The other will probably be Johnny's Select Seed. And I also worked with Ray, but he was a single owner founder. But I'm going to prefer, I still write for Acres. After 47 years, I'm one of their primary experts. They will ask, when they can't answer a question, they go to someone like me to answer it. I'm the bottom line. If I don't know, I'll make something up, and it most likely will be pretty accurate and ready to go. Look at all the people. Potential of herbs is a cash crop. Yes, you wrote. Yes. Forest farming is not out. Yes. And Chuck Wanzer. Yeah. So okay. Chuck Wanzer was Wilcox Natural Products, one of 2 primary exporters of American agriculture into Hamburg. And at that time, Hamburg had all these Drogenhauses, those drug houses. And okay, let's get into that. The history of pharmacy started with Culpeper and his doctrine of signatures. This is before we had a concept of chemistry. And what they would do is look at the plant, and the plant's shape and color and how it grew would describe to witches what its primary use was. Red clover. Well, it's red, so it's obviously for the blood, right? Well, it's high in iron. Lungwort. Lungwort is blue. Lungs. Yes. And so there was like astrology becoming astronomy, a metaphor of the way the plant looked in ancient periods, and that was Culpeper that called his thing Doctrine of Signatures. That then was modified by Dr. Shook. Dr. Shook was in the 30s and started writing his work in Treatise on Herbology and Advanced Treatise. He only did two, but the Mormons used that doctrine, and it's why all your major pharmacy is either out of New York and New Jersey, which is agribusiness and gangsters, Mirror Corporation, Panic, come and I can name them. MF Neal, Wilcox was out of Boone, and later became Peels Incorporated, division of Coca-Cola down in Florida. Chuck ran a solvent extraction, CO2 solvent extraction plant doing things that Europe hadn't even gotten to yet. Germans came over quick in the 30s, grabbed the wrong plants, started promoting Echinacea purpurea as the plant of choice, where Shook went with Angustifolia. And purpurea is now being classified as a Rudbeckia, and that's where the Germans made a bunch of errors. They also did other things. We'll talk about it. I met Gordon Wasson when he had written The Sacred Mushroom before Clark Heinrich, and I knew him and the concepts of the mushroom containing psychoactive properties that nobody had identified muscarine or muscimol at that time. I have actually sold tonnage of Amanita to a surgical house in Chicago, not Mallinckrodt, but one next door, and they use that for surgery. Not the muscarine, but the muscimol is used as a heart surgery for deep surgery on the heart, and that comes from Amanita. That's what I learned from Gordon Wasson. So then I started studying herbs a little more closely in the 70s. This is before I started working in the 80s for Henry Barth. And I wrote the first book on the chemistry of herbs. It was originally called Legal Highs, and then it had a bunch of mutations. And those are the older days. And I then wrote the first book on psychedelic mushrooms, which was the psilocybin. I studied under Dr. Suntz with Perfecti, or whatever his name is now, but was the one that did GMO. Excuse me. I've been so stressed. I'm getting sick trying to make this thing happen in light of everything else that's going on. But I'm gonna continue. That Dr. Stuntz, we took Psilocybe stuntzii, which was a mutation. We inoculated. Oh, yeah, thank you. There, this can be put in there. Thanks. Thank you. I've got so much going on. I didn't get much sleep just so I could be here today. And we decided to try to preempt what might be hack. Chuck Wanzer. Yeah, you got that answered. He was out of Boone, North Carolina. He ran Wilcox Natural Products and is now retired like I am. And he comes in once or twice a year to spend time with me. His protege and mine was not Ecuador. I forget where their crews. The last harvest I did was 150 truckloads of Ponderosa pine cone just for one single market for fire starter all through the Eastern Seaboard. It was a Dutch. Okay, so then after the Native American religion was formed in 1948, Northern Cheyenne did that as a political move. That American Indian didn't use peyote. That was a thing down further in Mexico, but they used the peyote ritual as a way for sovereign on their land because of this coming up Uniform Controlled Substance Act and the way the feds regulated marijuana back then, which is not anything related to LSD or some of these other things. And in another lecture, I'll tell you how that all works, because taking psychedelics is actually, they're toxins, but they have chemistry that's so closely related to neurotransmitters, the brain freaks out overproduces those neurotransmitters like a jump start. And now you have a resonant cavity oscillator from the brain dialoguing with subtle bodies outside the physical body, which I developed in the 70s as chi, which was a microtubule with structured water. And Jerry, while he was my lead, hadn't even begun the structured water studies that he's famous for right now. And by the way, the structure of water on Mars is quite different than here, which means there's a whole bunch of possibilities of what structured water might further imply that you haven't even. You put structured water, that's H3O2, that's hydrogen peroxide, H2O2, and you add a third hydrogen molecule, and you put that inside a fullerene or a carbon base, which is C60, or 60 of them, or 120. The spatial difference between one carbon and the other is it forms a ball. Okay, it's 1.4 nanometers, enough to put a single molecule of water in it, and water has memory. And because it has memory, what happens next is that it changes with everything it touches. And a fullerene with structured water in it becomes a finest antioxidant you could possibly develop at this level of our technology. If you put instead deuterium, just another form of water, deuterium inside it, now with Carnegie Mellon's trigger mechanism and Lockheed's teleportation laser, you now have a neutron fullerene fusion bomb. And that was what was deployed in Building 7 when all the rest of it was happening. Just make a note, that's the two different kinds of water, of which there's tritium, and there's old man Willard that had H709 with a free radical ion that Kerry Reams then did, and others started to build on. And what you're going to find is we're going to have a periodic chart of each atom, like oxygen, helium, and so on. And then we're going to have a secondary field of charts on the way the molecules, how they behave in nature. And the simplest one right now is hydrogen and oxygen, which is water. And that's where we're going to be in 20 years. And I'm going to tell you further that we don't even have a clue yet what altered states are. But that's what the neurotransmitters do. Because when you go into these different altered states, this one has laws in physics that are different than this one. And what you've got now is an ontology of possibilities of becoming what you can conceive of as God. And you're going to start with the garden. Now, after I did Native American religion, I went up to Basin, Montana, and became a roadman and did the 2 sanctioned peyote rituals in the state of Washington. There were 42 people. Only 2 people got sick. I can tell you what that's about. We spent 3 days cleaning the peyote, and the tufts inside the peyote is a strychnine-like substance that can, if not cleaned properly, get you quite ill. And that's one of the ritual parts of preparing the sacrament. I had a water bearer and had a bunch of firemen that would escort people that were getting sick out of the teepee. So had not a bad, pleasant, that was being taken care of, while the rest of the people in there, 42 people that were from my University of Washington class where I was teaching. It was a very interesting experiment where I went with that. This is why I'm into all of this, because believe this or not, agriculture and physics and religion have a simple connection that we haven't discussed in philosophy. We won't do that in this course. That is the purpose of Albert Schweitzer University, is to allow the children to tell us what I haven't given them that they want to know. And that's how I'm going to grow from a child. I think they're smarter than we are. Oh, I've been very ill trying to get all of this done. Then we come to the Uniform Controlled Substance Act and why I wrote The Magical and Ritual Use of Herbs. By assigning rituals, those 28 herbs They kept them out of the Uniform Controlled Substance Act. Not illegal to hold or grow psychedelic mushrooms. It was illegal to extract chemistry and or sell them. That was illegal. And there are a lot of people that went to prison because they were growing them, which was not illegal, but because they didn't know that, they went to prison. And this was, again, the control of government over our worst drugs, sugar, tobacco, and alcohol, which are legal and are responsible for more deaths than any of the others combined. So I have my own radical ways of wanting to try to change what I think I see needing change. And I'm just one footprint of a number of people like me. And what I'm trying to do is take younger generations, show them what I discovered, and then let them go on. It won't be the Gen X's or the millennials that change this universe, but the Gen X's now see me as Timothy Leary. I'm not. I'm something different. But my hope is that I can contaminate them with some of my ideas. Their children, the Gen X's children and beyond, are going to change this world, hopefully for the better. There's the polarization of things, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. That's man that does that. And, depending on what your belief systems are, one person, it's okay. That's why a Buddhist can be a Christian, but a Christian can't be a Buddhist. It's worldviews and the doors they open. And that's what I learned on the limitations of physics and religion and why I have two brains. I know I don't know, but I'm in discovery. That was last week's class. This one is the herbal pharmacy. Now, herb classification today goes into either chemistry or alleged use. Like it does something, but we don't know why yet. And that is what the children are going to, and their children are going to discover. It probably isn't about chemistry, because chemistry is now evolving. You want to know there's a difference between natural chemistry and synthetic. What is it? Well, we can't determine that yet, but the Germans, what they did in the 30s is they started extracting targeted chemistries and called that standardized extract. And that's what they made were tinctures, elixirs, and essences. These are different levels of alcohol or a different solvent that might take out a specific chemistry. And that was Roy Teranishi with USDA, 2 years behind me, and we were best friends. He worked out of San Francisco and followed my work with chromatography and mass spectroscopy, which is the way I did it in trying to isolate one grouping of chemistry. And as you will look at the herbs that I've got 360 of them. I've identified all the chemistries and creepy in it in terms of whether it's toxic, considered toxic by mainstream medicine. For me, radiation is toxic. Why would they use that against cancer when all you have to do is feed the body with extra oxygen, and the body creates ATP, which is a quark gluon plasma, and takes care. It's a quark gluon plasma that it doesn't even exist in nature except at the beginning of the Big Bang, and it is ever present in your body as you recreate new universes. Yeah, the physical body is possibly the finest laboratory you're going to find. And each person is different. That's why we have, acupuncture over here, and we have allotropic medicine there, and naturopathic medicine here, and who knows what that is up there, mainstream medicine. And then medicine got so subdivided. And the reason I'm giving you this basic background, because I have all the references and other things. Oh, yes, I want to make sure I talk about synchronicity. Yes, I do. The reason, because that, by the way, synchronicity is, that was originally developed by Carl Jung, which is, I'm a third generation Jungian psychotherapist. So that means imaginal psychology. That's three generations. There's Carl Jung, and there's Gurdjieff, and I got some other things. And then there were James Hillman, and he was my teacher. And I studied with him and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and June Singer to become a second polymath, now in psychology, trying to find out the relationship between soft sciences, that's what they call them, soft psychology, and hard sciences, physics, with herbology, agriculture. I think there's something else going on here, and I don't have the clues, but I think our children do, and or will evolve toward that direction. Oh, it's so very nice to see you. I'm going to just look at a couple of things here. Multifossil university. Yeah, good luck with that. You know, when you try to do that, I'm still standing. Oh, that was a good one. Oh, man. John Wendell. I remember John Wendell. And University, Roger and Dr. Miller would be a great. Who's Roger? I'll have to find out, John. The earth is a living creature. Yes, it is. Actually, its gut is now defined as mycorrhiza, of which mycelium is the network like the brain is for us. And when you talk about that, there's a woman up at UBC that actually is saying that the mother tree, the oldest tree in the forest, is the, you know, like an avatar. She's saying that it sends out this network when an impending storm or snowfield is going to about to hit. And now her metaphor isn't correct yet, but she's close, because the hierarchy in the soil with thrip and nematode going right on down into microviruses, the same thing that's happening with our gut, what I would call the first brain. So, hi, Doctor. Yeah. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Let them know to hit the like button to help us out a bit.
What do you need?
To let them know to hit the like button to help us out.
Oh, yeah. I'm supposed to inform you. I'm new at this. Hit the like button to what?
Help us out here.
Oh, yeah. Help us out. YouTube may not be the platform I ultimately choose. I talked with Carrie Cassidy yesterday. She's a personal friend now. Her and her boyfriend come over and spend time with us off scene, where I go through the woods and I show them how I live in the woods. Do you know I am your MacGyver for the military? I'm not MacGyver. I'm also not Molnar, but I'm actually I'm Dr. Rick. And I'm going to, well, kids, like Mr. Wizard, well, kids, it works like this. But I'm not right, because I know I don't know. And what I'd like to do is talk about the concept of synchronicity, because when you do your plant selection predicated on your form of medicine that you're going to do, you're going to go back to Carl Jung. And synchronicity is now the first algorithm I used when I created the first artificial intelligent being at Claremont. I did a demonstration at a big workshop, was immediately placed under arrest, and they took everything of mine, made it top secret. That's why I'm not in Talbot's book, The Holographic Universe, because I did it and may get a Nobel Prize posthumously. Gabor in 1967, I'm tangenting, but these stories are important because you've got everything that I would give a child to select your crops. And so what I'm doing is just pretty much doing a little dance, hi, ha, ha, you know, and then you do your homework. And by the way, last week, which you never got, your assignment was, I wanted you, oh, this is very important for the teaching. Last week's assignment is complete and turn in next week latest. Never happened. So you got next week to do this one. What would you like to have posted in the blog and not? I want you to send me your information, the questions, and whether you want them in the blog or not. And the reason I'm asking you to distinguish, to educate me, but maybe not for publication, or yes, you do. And I'm going to tell you why. You can choose, and I will respect that. The ones that do, when preparing it for posting, please include any information or not for networking. Networking, when I do workshops, and I've been doing them for 40 years, I'll have maybe 120 people in a workshop, and 4 groups will form out of that, maybe 5, of 3 to 10 people in a neighborhood that are doing a joint thing together. That's different than individual farms. This is where you help the instructor also grow in my knowledge base. And that will be succeeded by, hopefully, a long lineage, instructors, and master instructors. I'm calling myself I've got full tenure. I'm the only one that's a professor at this point. I also got full tenure because I've been doing it for 50 years. I've been teaching for 50 years, not 20. And when I say that, I am no longer going to try to teach. I'm going to give you what I would do, and some resources that I have, and then step back with the Metaphysical Library and the networking blog that starts, and watch how that pollinates each other for a new way of doing things. And I don't know if it's going to work. And the way I'm setting it up is not the way it's going to end up finally. It is a work in progress. That's a good way to do it. Oh, well, yeah, my bridge fell out during coronavirus, and my dentist won't see me, so I look like an old man. And
Sorry. Are you finished with this?
No, I'm not.
Bit? Please finish up with this because we got to have them ask questions.
Okay. I'm being told to move right. Hi. What is that? Yeah, hi there. I'm told to move on along. They don't use cattle prods yet, but they are using whips. And let me show you my whip collection someday. I have a 9-foot Australian or 16-foot Australian bull whip I use when I go up into Canada, because you couldn't carry a big enough rifle when a grizzly bear decides to hunt you. A bull whip, when you pop it in front of his face, will cause that bear, no matter what, to stand and rethink why he's going to eat you, because he can't figure out how you can reach that far. It is a metaphor of what I learned when I was a child, having to fend off monkeys with a monkey stick. When you put a chain between them, and that's where the first nunchuck was created in 1950, I think it was. Wasn't Bruce Lee. I popped the monkey in the head 12 feet from me. Quick. And a monkey stopped forming hordes to eat children, because where I lived there, Baguio and Manila, a single straight jungle. And if you wanted to play as a small child, you had to carry monkey sticks, and I got very good with them. And then my seafood trainer, when I was there as a little child, put a chain between them so you could hit them further away. And that set a meme throughout the monkey kingdom, and I now use that for grizzly bears up in Canada. That's what I learned as a child, and now I'm trying to pass that concept on. Once you get that place, there's something else that happens and opens doors. So this is where you help it will also your response later for children that create breakthroughs in our education. That serendipity and synchronicity, not a Buckminster Fuller thing. Synchronicity came from Carl Jung. And Carl Jung, it's something where the power of the group is greater than the sum of the individual parts. And something more comes out of, just like the hierarchy out there in the soil as a living planet, or your gut. When you work in groups, small groups, you are creating something we do not yet understand, that Carl Jung defined as synchronicity. And that's why you want to network, and why you want to have a blog where you're pushing your own ideas, and the rest of us in the same lifeboat understand how that person just saved himself by using water wings as a metaphor. Why? I inject that. And your next assignment, after you finish the first one, your assignment this next week is to tell me what 20 herbs you chose, and I want a 2-paragraph on each one for everybody else to synchronize and why you did it that way. And what will happen next is you're going to help your neighbor see something he didn't see. And that's what I want children to do eventually. And when you do that, I mean, watch when they don't know they can't do something, and they'll figure a way to do it. That's how altered states work. Okay.
Let's have them ask some questions.
Yeah. Now, I guess you guys are ready for some questions. How long have we been on?
59 minutes.
Oh, so this one went over a little bit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, the last one did too, and it got lost. I hope this one doesn't. You're to read them to me. Doctor says say something. So, do you have questions? Do I have to write something? Or did they hear me?
They'll hear you. So right now, folks, if you could please ask Doc Ram some questions, and we will get to answering them.
It would be a wrap, and then you'll have all these millions of downloads. And by the way, in these downloads, there are 300. I gave you 4: getting started, and a processing plant, echinacea, and comfrey. I want you to see how I evolved processing in groups like that thing, and how to get started, how you start your bedding plants, and how I did it when I put a field out, and crop selection and what they are. I've got tables, unbelievable. And work I did with I want now. If you have questions, you can submit them, but we're going to have to do some sort of thing so I'm not inundated, because I have been overwhelmed just fixing things that were broken that shouldn't have been on this computer, our website, our server, my telephones, CenturyLink that brings me in here for the bandwidth. It's all something else is going on because there are too many different creepy things, and it shouldn't be this hard.
Okay. With resonance, Crystal, is that
morphogenic? That's an interesting term. Yes and no. Morphogenic is a different form of cavity oscillators, are where your subsets in moving from one subset to the next. Like the leg bone's connected to the knee bone's connected to the... Morphogenic is more different, is a subcategory of that in crystal physics, but a solid state physics. We can find similarities. Sometimes a spontaneous answer on mine would be more appropriate if that's a more detailed thing you want. Submit it, and I'll try to include it in next week's lectures. In other words, I can field some questions today, but if I don't do it, you could submit them for next week's response. Did that work for you guys?
Yeah.
Everybody thumbs up on that? I don't know how to do this. I would
Crystal was saying that the teaching method in the communities is what she was referring to when asking if that would be a morphogenic resonance.
Yes and no. It's synchronicity. There are algorithms